Welcome back to Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates. Welcome to day number 53. It seems like once you pass the halfway mark, it's just a sprint to the end. But obviously, with 46 more days to go, or something like that, we still have a long, long way to go with this 101 day challenge. So, welcome back. Now, as you know, the last couple of days I've been thinking about what does it mean to come up with scenarios? What are scenarios? Like, what are the elements of scenarios? How do we come up with scenarios? Of course, we were discussing the state impact checklist, which is a checklist that helps you to evaluate the courses of action. And I thought, well, if you're going to evaluate courses of action, then we need to look at the state teamwork checklist because the state teamwork checklist really goes into systematically going step by step through the process of laying out the passages or elements of a service agreement when two or more people or entities would like to work together. And so this was like the original idea of what it means to go through some scenarios. Because once you are able to correctly identify the entities who are possibilities, the possible entities, the options that you could choose to work together, whether it be people on the same team in your organization, whether it be you and a customer, whether it be you and a provider. There's a lot of providers you have to choose from. There's a lot of customers that you have to go and get. You have a lot of people in your company that you're working with. And so you can create a spreadsheet and just write those names down and then identify the outcomes of each of those entities. What does everybody want for outcomes? Long term, what do they want for reuses? So that's what we were discussing earlier. And then from reuses, we went on to actions. So, like, what are the actions that these entities use to support each other? And then what other actions are needed to within the project or endeavor? And then you're able to fill in each of these boxes under each of these entities. And so today we're going to move down to the next box. But before we move into that box, I wanted to tell you a story. So I don't know why I started thinking about that movie, The Imitation Game. All right, so Alan Turing, he is trying to figure out the German code. They want to know what is happening with the Germans. Where are they going to attack? What are they thinking? How are they communicating with each other? What's going on? Unfortunately, they can't understand the messages. And so this is the attempt to use computers in order to receive a message that does not make any sense and then try to turn it into something that makes sense. Now, why is it that I started thinking about this movie? It's because I started thinking about insight, the difference between a person who has insight and a person who does not have insight. Now, obviously, if you're able to build a decryption machine and you're able to understand everything that the enemy is talking about, then what? Then you can stop them, right? Now, that's the interesting thing in this movie. So they at some point the British Army has complete and full understanding of the messages, the meaning of the messages, but they cannot actually go and directly intervene in every single attack. Because to do so would mean that they have this special information, and then the Germans would have changed the code. And so the British had to pretend like they had to make decisions which looked like that they were making good decisions, while at the same time they had to make it look like they didn't really know everything that their enemy was going to do. There was like this fine line, all right? So they had to, even after they had full understanding of what was going on, they had to use this principle. They had to use this insight. They had to use this maturity in order to implement a plan. So let's just use the spreadsheet. All right. So you have the British, that's the name or description. and then you have the Germans. What are the outcomes? All right, so the British, the outcomes, they wanted to, what? They probably wanted to defend themselves. They wanted to maintain world dominance. The Germans, they wanted to gain world dominance. The British, they wanted to have democratic institutions. They wanted to have a market economy. The Germans wanted to have control and power over the minds of the people, control the means of production, and those are the outcomes. So these are the outcomes. These are the reuses. This is what's going on in the world. Now, in this case, they don't actually support each other. They're actually fighting one another. So how did they fight with one another? They were sending communications to their army, and they were allying with other countries. They were fighting each other via weapons. And now, so you can see how, like, when you're working your way down, it's kind of general, right? Like you think you're coming up with like a lot of good ideas, but at the same time, like, how wide does it actually get? Like, how many boxes can you fill in to identify the outcomes that each entity wants? When it comes to a country and war, obviously there's a lot of outcomes. There's a lot more outcomes. And there are a lot more reuses. And the name or description at the top, when you're filling in this Excel spreadsheet, it's like a general term. It's a general description. Outcomes are, it's also kind of a general term and general description. Reuses, it's also general. Support is actually when you start, when you talk about how people are fighting or competing with one another, you can start to pinpoint the battlefields. All right. So, and if they're working together, you can pinpoint the communication points. You can actually put people into those positions, and that's what today's message is about. So, the next step in the state teamwork checklist. So, in your Excel spreadsheet, you need to add one more line. It's called personas include. All right. Personas include, and we're talking about entity personas. All right, so this is like any persona which is involved with this endeavor. So if we're talking about war, I mean, it starts with, if you're talking about Germany, you start with Hitler, then you're going to his generals, then you're going to the different divisions of military, and then from those divisions of military, you have those generals, and I don't know much about the military, but they go into different groups, and then they're like deployed into certain regions, and then each deployment has like, what's the word, platoon, or like they have a group of people, and then each one of these people has a specific function within this operation. And then so you can see how it's from the top, it looks like the outcomes are general, and the reuses are general, and the support is kind of general, and then other actions are starting to get more, we're starting to get more and more of like a picture. But then once you hit the personas, like the entity personas, once you have to identify the contact points between two entities, then you can now go back up and you can start thinking, all right, well, if this person, all right, so let's go back to the textbook. All right, so we have a staffing firm and they are providing staff for a company. So now we've also talked about this experience before, the salesperson. All right, so within the company, we have an HR manager, and then the HR manager needs to have contact with the department managers, because the department managers are the ones who are communicating with the HR manager about specific aspects of the staff that they need. So, and then the department manager is going to get that information from the factory floor. All right, so the specific area where this person is needed is communicated to the department manager. The department manager fills out the information. I need this kind of person. And they have a discussion with HR. Then, all right, so then we have personas, right? So we have a on the floor manager, that's one persona. We have a department manager, that's another persona. We have a HR manager, that's another persona. All right, and then the HR manager also needs to communicate with finance to understand what's the budget for this hire. So, and then also we need to also have like a higher level manager, possibly like a CEO, but I don't know if the CEO is going to get involved. It depends on the size of your of your company. Likely, it'll be it could be the department manager. If it's a small company, then it's a higher level manager. So we got a floor manager, we got a department manager, we got an HR manager, and all of those things have to happen. So those are other actions that go into what? Then that HR manager creates a document so that they can communicate their needs to the staffing firm. Now, the staffing firm is going through all of their information to see if they have somebody who matches up. They're putting, so then you got the staffing firm, the person who's communicating directly with the HR manager, and then you have that staffing person who is also connecting with websites. They're connecting with other headhunters. They're connecting with other staffing firms. They're connecting with the employers, employees of their company, who are going to go through their channels to try to find this person, the person that can fill this role. So you have like the specific, like how they support each other, the HR manager with the staffing firm manager, and then you also have other actions. So you have this staffing manager that's going to work with their staff, and then their staff is going to connect with other websites, other companies, and other entities in order to find prospective employees for this position. All right, so now all of a sudden we have all these personas. Like we've just listed out like 10 different well, not 10, floor manager, factory manager, HR manager, staffing firm manager, other staff people on their group, and then the other companies that they're connecting with, possibly a higher level manager, and finance, like 10 different people. So now if you got 10 different people, all of a sudden it's like, okay, is there anything else you want to add? So do we want to like add some more information regarding how these entities support each other? Do you want to add some information about other actions that is needed? So those are the things we were just talking about. And then reuses. All right, so now we can kind of think like, what about other reuses? So we've talked about like the company before, and like how a company, when they're going through this experience, so then the reuses are what? So the HR, they're going to have some specific reuses, like which staffing firms are the easiest to work with, and then what was one of them? How to hire for general knowledge or general aptitude, general ability, compared to hiring for very specific abilities. Also, trying to figure out the difference between like, all right, so should we hire someone from outside of the company, or should we create some kind of database so that we can continually work with our employees within the firm in order to help them to work up through the company. All right, and then the outcomes. So yeah, we need the benefit from that product or service. We need the benefit that comes from that hire. We also need the company to continue to communicate well with each other in order to bring this person on board and make sure that he's successful in this process. And the staffing firm wants to make sure that they're right. So we talked about their reputation. They want to increase their skills. They want to increase their ability to work with these companies. They want more business in the future. So all of these things come together to develop this. But what is the scenario? So I'm still working with this idea of like, what exactly does it mean for a scenario in this situation? Because this is like a function, right? So this is all kind of like the context. We need a guy. Is this scenario like actually the deliverable? Like, the humans, the people that are going to be interviewed in the process. So when you interview this person, so let's say the staffing firm provides like 15 people, and then you interview all 15 people, then like it's like maybe you have to go one step deeper. The scenario is like, what's needed in order to fulfill this project? What are the needs for this project compared to the attitude, the aptitude, the ability of that person who's providing the service? And then you have this variety of different scenarios for who could be the best fit or hire for this position. So just to wind up the video today, I'm starting to think that when we're talking about scenarios, what we could actually be talking about is all of these different checklists. Like each checklist is introducing you to some scenarios that you can start to consider in order to develop your insight. They're thinking tools in order to help you think through a variety of different situations so that you can plan better, you can think well, and then you can achieve better results and do great. Thank you for tuning in to Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates.